Yo, my friend, hello and welcome. How are you doing today?
Good. Just looking a little dapper today. You as well, by the way.
I just, putting it all out there for a little Halloween fun.
I am very hot. I can only assume.
Yes, I've
you as well.
I've had this on for 30 seconds and I already need a shower.
It's not coming off. It's permanently glued to your body at this point.
Yeah, it might be, unfortunately.
We don't know where human flesh and fabric, where one ends and the other begins.
You don't want to know.
It's getting very human centipede-esque. It's getting creepy.
Gosh.
Halloween, you know?
Abort this analogy.
Okay. All right. Who are we? What are we doing today?
Yeah, hello everyone. We are the Pixelists. That's Blake. I'm Will. And we're here today to talk about some Critical Role Campaign 3. Specifically episode 2. But we're the Pixelists. I just said that, but we like to talk about all sorts of nerdy stuff. But yeah, today is Critical Role time, baby.
Yeah, well, real quick, let's our Critical Role friends over at Critical Role, they had their costumes going, so naturally we have ours.
That's right.
I was a little dapper, repping my man, the Tazbot, in the middle. And what's going on with you?
I'm a penguin. Penguins are my favorite animal, and that's pretty much the long and the short of it. I was actually gonna get some Loki horns and be like a Loki variant that's a penguin.
Nice. I like it.
But they were really expensive, so I decided just to be a penguin.
If you guys want this outfit, by the way, the Hibachi penguin costume, it will only cost you $400 USD. So
that's not true.
It was $18 from Safeway.
It was pretty cheap on Amazon. So I mean, I know we're 2 days out from Halloween, but if you're in a panic, you might be able to find something.
Yeah. Well, so we're talking about Campaign 3, Episode 2. What an amazing episode. I really loved it a lot. We can definitely dive into that here in a minute. But I think we want to talk about what happened in this episode, right?
Yes, sir.
Why don't you take it away and tell us what happened in Episode 2 of Campaign 3 of Critical Role?
Alrighty. Yeah, so let's jump right into it. The episode picks up right where we left off at the end of episode 1 with this motley crew that we've assembled facing off with Lord Eshteross. He basically starts charging at him, and basically a brawl just kind of busts out here. Orym kind of Orym hesitates for a second because this is all coming out of nowhere, and he's like, "Are we really going to attack this old man?" But it gets brutal pretty quick. Everyone's fighting except Bertrand Bell, who, while this kind of chaos is broken out, decides to just mosey his way on over to the fireplace and finds a glass of scotch that Lord Eshteross had been drinking before the party arrived. And he just takes a sip and is like, "Good job, everyone. Keep going." And so they keep fighting, and a couple cool things happen in the fight early here. Laudna showcases her ability Unsettling Presence, which she describes as her jaw unhinging and her eyes beginning to like drip an oily black. And I just thought that was awesome and worth mentioning. And F.C.G also showcases one of his abilities. It was called Transfer Suffering, I believe, which he shares damage with someone. And Lord Eshteross just basically put the pummeling on Orym. I think Matt describes it. He like cracks his kneecap, makes Orym fall to the ground, and just starts bashing him. And so FCG is like, "Yeah, let me help you out here." And actually, this turn from Lord Eshteross was nuts because he does all of that to Orym, and then he action surges, which gives him basically like a complete refresh of his turn. He goes and gets a natural 20 on Laudna, and then strikes Dorian twice, knocking him unconscious.
It was kind of like what just happened is really what I was thinking. It was
this old man can pack a punch.
Yeah.
So he knocks out Dorian, and so Fern and Imogen are, trying to do their best, do some damage to him, while FCG goes and gets a healing word on Dorian to get him back conscious. And Dorian, in turn, then healing words Orym to get him back up after that brutal beating he'd taken. And at this point, Bertrand finally decides to join the fray, and so he unsheaths his sword, makes his way over to the combat. and he decides to throw his glass of scotch to try to hit Eshteross, but unfortunately, Travis nat ones and ends up hitting Fern in the back of the head. Um, so basically, now that Orym's back up, Laudna recovers from that nat 20. They all go in and give some more attacks, which leads Eshteross to screaming, "Enough!" Kind of like we thought he
Classic
might,
enough,
yeah.
yeah.
And he's like, "Okay, I've seen enough. You've proven it to me." So he strolls back to his armchair and takes a seat and is like, "Let's talk." And as he's kind of going back to his seat, Ashton takes their knife and throws it and stabs Bertrand in the chest, basically letting him know, like, "Hey, thanks for participating. Like, what are you doing here?"
Mhm.
So yeah, Eshteross sits down in his chair and calls everyone closer to him. And his cane that he's been wielding in combat, he actually messes with it a little bit. And
Mhm.
this magical energy pulsates from it that affects everyone in the party except for Imogen and Laudna, who were still standing at the back of the room,
Right.
causing everyone had to make a charisma save. It's later revealed to be that this was a Zone of Truth spell, which Dorian gleaned that later from having been familiar with that type of magic in the past. So
Right.
Eshteross was, making sure that this next conversation they were all having was going to be on the up and up. And so what he does is he asks them their intentions, wants to know what they're here for, why have they sought him out. And he learns that they're here for a few reasons, mainly looking for some work, a chance to make some coin, but also the potential to make a few connections, specifically Imogen wanting to know if he can facilitate her access to the Starpoint Conservatory. He lets them know that he indeed does have those connections, and maybe they can work together.
Right.
He begins kind of telling him what's going on, saying that aside from the typical socio-political issues that kind of plague any city of this size, there are also some deadlier and darker dangers beginning to creep up from the jungles below, and he's just looking for like-minded people to help combat these issues that Jusar is facing. And as they're kind of having this conversation, he reveals that he was once a mercenary before he inherited the estate that he has from a woman named Mistress Prudage. He inherited the manor and the estate. But now he's too old to be on the front lines. So now that he has these resources, he looks for more able-bodied younger people of like heart to kind of do stuff for him. And he lets them know that he has lots of agents like this to be his eyes and ears out in the world. So he would love to, potentially work with them as well. But he lets them know that not only does he have a lot of agents, he also has a lot of enemies. So that if they do work for him, it's going to be better to keep it on the down low that he is their employer. He wants them to keep that a secret. And Orym, one thing of note is Orym does roll an insight check during this, kind of to see if it seems like, Eshteross is being um, truthful.
Forthcoming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
forthcoming. And he actually rolls a nat 20. So Matt brings back the whispers. We actually
Yes.
get the first whisper of the campaign and the first whisper in a really long time. So
Which
obviously,
let's make sure we mention that in our deep dive afterwards, by the
yeah,
way.
we will.
I'll make a note for that
Okay,
as
yeah.
well.
So we don't know what he reveals because it was a whisper, but still thought it was worth mentioning. Um, so like I said, he has a lot of enemies, wants them to keep it on the down low that he works for them. And this kind of conversation leads them to ask, okay, so wait, you have a lot of agents and stuff. What's going on with you and Bertrand? And Eshteross reveals that yeah, Bertrand did work for him before, and he tells them that in the previous mission, Bertrand actually abandoned the mission, abandoned his troops, and was referred to as like a tragedy and unfortunate. And this mission seemingly related to the Ivory Syndicate, which is like this dark organization that Ashton notes is moving basically unimpeded right now in the city. Um, and while they're talking about all these past missions, Ashton does ask, "Hey, were you the one that sent uh, F.C.G. and all his friends to that silver mine that got attacked?" Which we know of from F.C.G.'s backstory. And both F.C.G. and Eshteross say that no, that was not him. So basically, after this long conversation, he then makes them an offer, saying that, "Hey, if you do this for me, it's kind of like a trial. Let's see if we can trust each other, see if we're on the same page. Then then maybe I'll have some work for you, and maybe we can, become associates. He lets them know that he'll pay them a stipend at the beginning, and if they were to complete it, there will be more money. But again, he reminds them, you cannot tell anyone that you're working for me. Most of the crew seems okay with this arrangement. Dorian is a little hesitant because he's worried about this Ivory Syndicate and wondering kind of what that is. And it is revealed that they got the name because they originally started in the ivory trade, but now they've moved on to many, many other things. The name just stuck. So while they're talking, Eshteross is like, you can have some time to think this over if you need it. And they take him up on that and decide to kind of leave, talk this over, and figure out where they want to go from here. So they leave his estate and make their way to the Weary Way Tavern, which is in the nearby Lantern Spire. To get there, they take this bridge known as the Fate Walk, which is this bridge hundreds of feet long that is the only rigid bridge in all of Drusar. It's the only like tactile, sturdy bridge in the whole city. And I just thought it was really cool world building. And Matt also mentions that they passed this thing called the Prakash Pyre, which is this torch that lights up the whole city at night. But it's currently extinguished because we find ourselves in the morning. So anyway, they make their way to this tavern and, order their breakfast and drinks and get to talking. They originally start by chastising Belle for not warning them about, the fight that was about to come and take place. And basically they're all just kind of mad at him for just not being forthcoming with them. And he's like, hey, all's well that ends well. Everyone's fine, and we now have what we wanted. We have a job to make some coin. You have these connections that you've been looking for. And he kind of, gets them off of his back. And so basically they all just start talking to each other, seeing if this is something they want to take on together, if it makes sense. And Imogen and Laudna are asked why they actually want these connections that they are searching for, why they want access to the conservatory. And F.C.G asks if is it about like finding answers to your dark sordid past, and Laudna says yes, it's exactly that. And it just gets kind of dropped. So they move on from them and they begin kind of questioning what Orym's doing here, and he says that he's looking for a fresh start. They said, oh, are you running from someone? And he says, no, I'm actually looking for someone.
Right.
They ask who, but he says, I'm not ready to say that yet. Once we complete this job, ask me again. And once they can see if they can really trust each other. Also in this time, Dorian thanks F.C.G for healing him during their fight, and they begin asking about like his abilities. How does he heal? Is it magic? Is it from a divine god that he worships? And he says that he doesn't know. It's just something he does. And people begin to talk about, we've never met anyone like you. And he says, yeah, I'm one of a kind. I have lots of brothers and sisters, all built for different sizes and different purposes. But I'm a bit more capable, a bit more tricked out than all of my brothers and sisters. And during this conversation, Laudna just brings up the dead rat that hangs on her belt and reveals that his name is Patè Derolo, and that he was named after the royal family of Whitestone, where Laudna is from. So then everyone's like, what? Like, tell us about your history there. And she reveals that she was born and raised there when the Derolos used to rule, but then there was a violent coup and they all died. And Orym pipes up and is like, actually, they're not dead. They came back. And Laudna didn't know this because she said she left Whitestone and never looked back. She became this like deep, deep recluse. Which brings us back to her dead rat. She says that Patè was her only company in this extreme isolation. It was just him and the voice in my head. Which
you gotta mention the amazing Cockney accent.
Yes,
as she puppeteers Patè.
Yes, Patè is incredible.
Highlighted the episode.
It was. I hope that voice stays for the whole campaign. But so as they're talking about all of this Whitestone Derolo history, Bertrand Bell pipes up and is like, yo, yes, you've never heard of the Derolos or Vox Machina. And he claims to be a part of Vox Machina, that he had helped them in their heyday, and begins showing off this like lapel pin with their symbol that he's wearing. He was like, yes, I was there when they rescued Frog Strongbone and all of that. And Orym said, yeah, I've heard of Vox Machina, but not of you. And Belle's like, no, yes, Keyleth and Vixalia, they're dear friends of mine. And he's like, Orym, how do you know them? And Orym reveals, he's from Zephyra, which is the home city of the Arashari, and home to the voice of the Tempest, Keyleth. And everybody's like, "What? You're one of the Arashari?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he zooms some wind to open the tavern door, and he's like, "That's about the extent of what I can do with it, though." Um, so yeah, everyone kind of doesn't really take what Bertrand said to much to have much truth in it. But they were like, "So what do you want from all this? What are you getting out of this, Bertrand?" And he claims that he's just here to foster young talent and make some coin on the side. And everyone's like, okay. And then kind of within their smaller groups, Imogen and Laudna, F.C.G and Ashton, and then the EXU cadre, they all kind of talk amongst themselves and agree that, hey, we do want to do this. So let's do it. They all decide that, yeah, all right. But one thing, F.C.G says, we need to all be honest with each other. And Patè agrees. He says, "Secrets don't make friends." And basically, from there, they're like, "Yeah, let's pay the bill and let's head back on to Eshteross's and see what we're getting ourselves into here."
Which
And
to me begs the question if F.C.G is being fully honest, but we'll talk
yeah,
more about that.
yeah,
So they go back to Eshteross, which Bertrand has incorrectly been calling him Eshteross, and Eshteross reminds him it's Eshteross. They go back and they say, "Yep, we've decided we want to do this." And Eshteross reminds them of just like the need for anonymity. Don't tell anyone you work for me. And they even talk about like, well, should we name drop a fake name? And Matt's like, yeah, as he like starts going through like his notes, like trying to come up with a fake name. And then Ashton jumps in and says, we're this area we work in, it's not uncommon for someone just to say my employer, and it, to not be really anything that someone would pry on. So we don't need an actual alias or anything like that. So they also talk about maybe getting like a contract at Dorian's suggestion that if they do this mission, Imogen will contractually be helped to get into the Starpoint Conservatory. And Eshteross basically says, well, this one's kind of a tryout. And if this goes well, then it'll lead to a bigger job, a more important job. And we can absolutely get like a formal contract written up at that
right,
point. So they agree to do it. Like you mentioned earlier, he offers an advance in the form of 50 gold each up front. He offers an additional 150 gold each. Well, actually, let me tell you what the mission is, so this actually makes sense. He mentions that over at Dial Hall in the Lantern Spire is a warehouse of his, and someone basically has been breaking in and stealing some of his products, some of his supplies, and he wants to know who it is. So he offers the 50 gold up front to take on this mission, an additional 150 gold to identify the person and come to basically a terms that solves the problem, and then an additional 350 gold if the perpetrator specifically is dealt with permanently, whatever that looks like. So quite a bit of gold to be made by each person individually, especially
mm-hmm.
early on in the campaign.
Yeah,
They all agree. He reminds them, now again, don't let anyone know you work for me. Dorian is observing the walking stick, and like you mentioned earlier, he remembers this time as a child where he had done something wrong and someone had cast a spell to sort of force him to tell the truth, and realizes it's the same kind of, it's emanating that same energy. And then Fern, Orym, and someone else notices shiny things all around the room, and they realize it's weapons that are literally hidden all over the room.
yeah,
Fern specifically notices a shiny object between two books, and it is a stiletto. And in natural Fern chaotic order, she says, "I want to try to steal it." Like immediately, I've taken on this mission, and so she tries to steal it. She rolls a 4 on the sleight of hand check.
Oof.
So Eshteross sees this happen, and then she basically lies and says like, "Oh, I was just like, I knocked it over. I'm so clumsy." So she has to roll a deception check, rolls a 5. So she's back to back, whiffing on the rolls. And then she's like, I mean, we really might need this for the mission. That's why I was grabbing it. And so Matt, third time's a charm, is like, all right, roll a persuasion check. And she rolls a natural 1. And so Eshteross is like, just put it back.
It was such a great moment.
Quietly puts it back, and they make their way. Fresh cut grass, by the way, is like, what am I going to do with this gold? I don't need it. I'm just going to eat it. And so gives his money to Ashton, his 50 gold advance. And Ashton, by the way, mentions just offhand that he has 4 different kinds of rages.
Yeah.
An interesting homebrew detail about his character that we'll have to figure more out about. And having said all that, they make their way off to Dial Hall, to the warehouse. And once they get there, they once again they pass by the Fate Walk Bridge, or go over, excuse me. And once they get to the warehouse, they decide that some of them will sort of case the joint, like go out back and see what's going on in the back alley of it. Some of them will go inside and take a closer look. And a couple of them will just be lookouts. So Bertrand and Fern decide to be the lookouts. And so they're kind of just looking casual. Bertrand actually is like, is my carriage almost here? And Fern's like, oh, are you waiting for someone? And he's like, I'm just pretending. And she's like, oh, right. Ashton, Dorian, and Laudna decide to case the place out back. And Orym, Fresh Cut Grass, and Imogen. Did I forget anyone? They're the 3 who go in and basically inspect the joint.
Mm-hmm.
So, by the way, while this is kind of all happening, I'm not sure really exactly when it happens, but Fern also is attempting to effectively pickpocket a random passerby and gets like 3 copper or something. And Ashton really scolds her and is like, that person needs that money. Like, you can't take that from them.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a really cool character moment for Ashton, who seems like this grimy, thief-esque, no rules kind of person, but clearly has this sort of moral code that makes him a character I really like.
Yeah, you don't take copper, is what he said.
Yeah. So anyway, the 3 people going inside, they go in and they basically announce that they are there as a go-between for their boss, Madame Shadana, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
And that it's this woman who's opening a shop in the core spire and says, yeah, we're here to look at some of your products, some of your textile, things like that. And we're going to get flagged for saying this, but I very much had like an Amazon workhouse like vibe of like people like throwing product around, trying to get things moved. There's a couple of workers. One's a dragonborn. I think the other one might have been a dwarf. I can't remember.
Yeah, and a human.
Pretty being watched pretty heavily by the person who seems to be the shop manager, who goes by the name of Dennis.
Dennis.
Right, not Dennis, Dennis. And it's sort of like, keep working, really keeping on them.
Mm-hmm.
And the other two are just like, they hate their life. I mean, they're just like, this job sucks, but they're doing it, whatever. Well, so anyway, while they are inside the joint, Dennis is like, yeah, of course. Well, if Madam, I've already forgot her name, Shadana, is wanting to purchase some products, sure, you can look around. So they start going through the boxes, looking things over. And while this is happening, Fresh Cut Grass casts Detect Thoughts. And Imogen uses her feat, which we're not quite sure what this homebrew feat is, but once again, lets her also detect thoughts. And she's also doing telepathy to Orym and Fresh Cut Grass, who are kind of like, whoa, like this is crazy.
Speak to my mind?
Yeah. But so they're doing detect thoughts on the workers as they're looking around. The 2 lowly workers are kind of like, what am I going to eat later? Like a nice sandwich is kind of all they're thinking about.
Yeah.
Dennis, however, is fairly apprehensive, and we'll talk more about that here in a second. The party splits up. Each worker's kind of helping them look around. And Orym actually finds one crate that has signs of being broken into. It has splintered wood on the corner of it. And there is a dusty residue, sort of a crystal residue, around the crate as well. Opens it up. Surprisingly, not very much has been stolen. It actually looks like someone was looking for something very particular. And it seems like in the middle, there is a gap in this open crate, which is full of like textiles and linens. it seems like there's a gap where maybe something had been and was taken out. Fresh cut grass at a separate box sees something similar and does I can't remember if it was an Arcana check or a history check, but basically Matt reveals that this is broomstone, which is an extremely rare substance. It was used back in the Age of Arcana to sort of power the flying cities, and nowadays is used by the airships. It's what powers the airships to allow them to actually fly.
Right.
Mentions that it's not really mined anywhere, but it's actually the total amount is controlled by larger. I kind of thought of it as like mafia-esque groups, but people absolutely control the majority of it, and it's kind of out of place being found here. Back out in the back of the behind the shop, Ashton is looking at a back door that's been effectively sealed shut. It's been barred, pretty much locked down, almost as if this was a door used a long time ago, but has been permanently shut for whatever reason. And then Dorian and Laudna decide to fly up onto, they use Dorian's winged boots to fly up on top of the warehouse. And it's covered by like bird poop and Simurg poop. And Simurg was the hawk-like animal with like the wolf dog head that the guards seem to ride around the city. And they do find a what seems to be a sack that has some coin in it. And they're kind of like, what's a coin purse doing up here? But otherwise, they don't see any kind of entryway. They don't see any kind of, what's it called? Like the ceiling.
Like a skylight?
Yeah, they don't see a skylight, anything like that. It seems like it's pretty much not really much of that interest up there.
Mm-hmm.
And then meanwhile, Fern and Bertrand, Fern's getting really bored. And she's like, I think I'm going to go inside. And Bertrand, before that, was kind of like, yeah, you want to go inside? Haha. And she's like, yeah, I think I will. And he's like, wait, what? She goes in and is like, hello, I'm here to buy some of your textiles. And Dennis is like, I don't know what's going on right now, but this really isn't like a open shop for people to come in. And either it's fresh cut grass or Imogen who peers deeper into her mind, and they sense that she's thinking, just get them out now, get them out.
Yeah.
Extremely nervous about people being here. So they're sort of brisked out of the store. They decide to sort of do a stakeout and break in after the shop's closed. So one by one, they watch as the employees leave. And then Dennis leaves very abruptly, is looking around very suspiciously, locks the door quickly. And as she's locking the door, Dorian has actually cast invisibility on Orym, who has snuck in through the door as one of the employees are leaving, and he's just waiting inside. Now, part of this plan was that Imogen would do telepathy with Orym, but it only works on someone she can see. And so Orym, because he's invisible, she can't cast it on him.
Yeah.
And so Dennis closes the door, locks it, and Orym finds himself totally isolated in this warehouse, which, by the way, all the lights have been put out because the shop is closed. And so he's in pitch black darkness, kind of feeling along the wall. Like,
he doesn't have dark vision.
Yeah, he's like, what am I doing here? Imogen and Bertrand, seeing Dennis so suspiciously leaving, they decide we need to follow her ASAP. So they actually leave their post to follow. And then Fern decides to try to communicate with Orym. So she goes out back and begins banging on that sealed door from before, which causes Orym to sort of panic of like, what is that noise? He pulls out his sword. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah, it's like,
and that is what happened on episode 2 of Critical Role. Left us on kind of a cliffhanger. So
it did.
It felt like a straightforward episode, but that was a long recap today. It was a lot of details. Lots to talk about for sure.
Well done, my friend.
Those of you who've been watching, by the way, this recap gets cut out and put onto a separate chunk. So if you're watching the recap, click below to get the full episode. And those of you who are here with us on the full episode, now we talk about my favorite part, our thoughts, theories, and ideas for this episode, which, by the way, if you have your own thoughts, definitely leave them in the comments below. We want to read about it, hear about it. Will, first impressions. I'm really hot, by the way.
Me too. Me too.
It's the price we pay for the Pixelists.
First impressions, though. First impressions, I really enjoyed the episode. Especially I loved that at the end there, it did kind of get spooky vibes. At least that's how Liam was playing it as Orym, you know? And I thought that was so fitting for like, it's Halloween, and I thought that was fun. And also the where Laudna started messaging him and the whole
Yeah,
table started like
like whispering. Yeah,
yeah, doing the whole thing.
so good.
That I think that was my favorite part. And I don't, it might get like, maybe sometimes a little of something is the best way. But a part of me was like, man, if they do that for the whole campaign, that would be amazing.
Yeah, it
But
was great. I think my high point would be Patè Derolo.
okay,
Um,
yeah, that's
absolute. We've been talking. You've been seeing some of the chatter on the internets as people have been talking about who's the best character. Now we finally know it's Patè Derolo, our esteemed rat colleague, friend of Laudna, and peppery personality. Definite my favorite right there.
yeah, okay, that whole info dump was great. Like I just had a huge smile on my face the whole time. Um,
Maybe we start there as we get diving in, because unless you want to jump around a little bit more, but
um, no, yeah, we can start there. That works for me. Yeah, I
I was
just
totally in the dark watching that, by the way. Having not seen campaign one, and I text for our listeners, I texted you and said, "Is this a campaign one thing?" And you were like, "Yeah." Um,
y-
what's going on in this scene from a critical role expert's point of view? Without, is there a way to clarify without giving away too much?
I think so. I can just kind of stay in the same bounds that they did. So obviously, like if this is your warning, I guess. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything that wasn't already outright spoiled or at least implied. But if you're like in the middle of campaign one and you just don't want any of it and you just kind of, I guess back out for the next 30 seconds or 40. Um, but yeah, big info dump. We knew from episode one that Laudna was from Whitestone, which I think I mentioned in our last episode that that was a pretty big place from campaign one. It is the home of the Derolos, which she spoke of, and a lot of them spoke of in this episode. Um, Basically, what happened here is the Whitestone was ran by the Derolos, and in part of campaign one was that there was a violent coup of this family that took over Whitestone from them, a violent overthrowing. And we find out that that's kind of seemingly that's when Laudna got out because Orym was the one that had to tell her that, oh no, a Derolo came back. Like Whitestone is once again, a Derolo's there.
Hmm.
So she didn't know that, which also goes to show how reclusive she really has been because that is like huge news. Like most people know these things. But yeah,
So this is common information, is what you're
mhm,
saying.
yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Um, so yeah, but so the Derolos were from campaign one, uh, ruled Whitestone, were overthrown, but then eventually their family did come back to Whitestone and regain it.
And
Um,
Orb said something like brought long lost son brought his sister back or something. Was that like
mhm.
a necromancy thing, or like also there was a sister?
Also, there was a sister.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. Cool. Okay,
And again,
cool.
there is a lot of stuff to unpack there, but I don't want to dive into more stuff than they've revealed. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of campaign one stuff there. But
Sounds like we just need to do our campaign one watch through.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was just super cool, especially because that conversation led to Bertrand, bringing up Vox Machina by name, which Vox Machina is that was the party of players from the first campaign. They were referred to as Vox Machina. Um, so that was just awesome, and Orym kind of has a pretty direct connection to that via he's an Arashari, which is who Keyleth is, which she was a member of Vox Machina. Um, so yeah, I mean that whole sequence was really cool. Put a big smile on my face. It's just interesting to hear it kind of referenced and be a part of the world, because in campaign two, the moments like that never really happened.
Hmm.
So it was interesting to kind of get that touched on, um, which this is kind of a good segue for something I wanted to say. It's not really related to that, but just on the notes of campaigns as a whole, this one has felt like I love campaign one and two. Um, but the energy and just like the cast, they all seem on their A game. They all seem so comfortable. Like I feel like there's just and maybe it's because the pandemic and now we're all coming back. There's lots of factors, right? But there's like a noticeable like joy and
Yeah.
like
Energy.
yeah, like energy. That's a good way to put it. Because again, I'm not putting down campaign 2 or whatever, but as someone who's watched all of it, I noticed like it felt like there was
Hmm.
so much more kind of like everyone feels way more comfortable, and it makes sense. Now this is their third time doing it. They're that much more experienced. Um, yeah, I don't know. I noticed it, and
Yeah,
I'm excited about it.
that's an interesting observation. Having only seen, maybe 10 or 12 episodes from campaign 2 and then maybe 20 from campaign 1, um, I it the differences aren't as obviously obvious to me since I haven't seen that much of Critical Role. That energy is definitely tangible though, and
Hmm.
it's fun. It's fun to
Yeah.
watch because you're watching people have a genuine good time as they play D&D, and for me, that's what D&D is all about, is like whenever I explain it to someone who has never played before, I'm like, "Imagine having this really awesome collaborative story over the next few hours where everyone's sort of vibing off each other." And that's really what you're seeing happen week to week so far. I really loved last night's episode. And it's especially fun, like when Laudna does her Patè Derolo accent and you see
Yeah.
everyone else's face light up, like seeing that kind of like genuine, I can't think of the phrasing for it, but just like, it's like an admiration or like a fellow, like, hey, great job. Like
Yeah.
that's really enjoyable to see too.
Yeah. 100% agreed. And that exact like energy chemistry is what I'm talking about. Like it just, and again, campaign 2 had that too. It's just, I don't know, it feels there in force from the beginning. Just excited about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to the whole Patè Derolo thing. Yeah, managing to skirt around too much without, spoiling stuff for people that don't want it spoiled. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to talk more specifically about it. But yeah, it was just awesome, and I loved this is painting a better picture of Laudna because she's kind of got this mystery swirled around her. Episode
Yeah.
one, she
So
go ahead.
go
I was gonna say
ahead.
episode one. I think pointed this out as well that she said Whitestone like that place sucks, and I was like, interesting. I wonder why she would say that sucks, but it makes sense now because her reference of it was during the violent overthrowing, and she just
Mhm.
you know. It also, I think I already said this, but it also just speaks to the level she has been isolated since then.
Mhm.
That she doesn't know any of that.
And have we confirmed she's actually undead?
We haven't like confirmed, but something's going on with her, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Well, here's what I also was wondering. I'm putting like the timetable together. So it's 8:43 right now, post-divergence.
I think something like close to that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, wasn't Vox Machina like 40 years earlier or something to that effect?
Around, yeah, around. I'm not looking at it, but yeah, it was like 30-ish, 40-ish, something like that.
Well, so I'm trying to age her basically. Like, okay, how,
Mm-hmm.
because I envisioned her and Imogen as sort of like these basically younger characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost actually, before it was revealed that they had met up at some point, I actually wondered if they were like sisters or something
Yeah,
like that. And so yeah, it would almost seem like Laudna's much older than Imogen, and
true.
actually maybe one of the older ones in the group. In terms of like, not older, because Fern's like 90 or something, or 110, or I don't know.
Yeah,
But
but I know what you mean.
yeah, it was a surprising detail as I was trying to like place the math of it. Which, I mean, if she's undead, maybe she's young and died a long
And
time ago.
was
I don't
yeah
know.
dead for some of that. That is interesting, and maybe she died in
In the coup.
the coup. Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be interesting. So like,
because she said she went away for a while. So I'm
yeah,
like,
who brought her
did you
back?
did you go away? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It was like, was she in a tomb and then someone brought her back? And the rat was like, not to be like be overly gruesome, but like maybe the rat was like, feeding on her corpse or something, or like died and
Ooh,
like was buried with her by accident or something. And it's like Pate is the one who kept me company.
yeah,
Like those kinds of details are interesting to me because I'm like, okay, it feels like there's more happening here than just like, well, I'm out on my adventure.
yeah.
I don't know.
There definitely is, and I think it's all but confirmed she's undead adjacent, right? So that would make sense and kind of make the age thing make a little more sense. What if
Right.
she was a Derolo?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I wouldn't understand the weight of that,
Yeah.
having not seen campaign 1. Um, if nothing else, I'm really liking the connectiveness. It makes me wanna go back and watch campaign 1, but I like that what's happening so far with these characters is not isolated to Marquette. It gives you a sense of, like, a connected world,
Yeah.
in the same way that how exciting it was to have Orym, Fern, and Dorian be
Right.
part of the team from Tal'Dorei. I mean, and what's
Right.
happening in Exandria Unlimited series. So yeah, I'm sure it would be huge, and people who've seen more would know the weight of that more than I would.
Yeah. That would be interesting. I mean, there's absolutely a mystery there, right? So I can't wait to find out more. And I just wonder what it means if she's undead. Like, I don't know about like what's I use the word undead. There might be like another more appropriate term for whatever she is,
Yeah.
but like she does seem young in the same way Imogen does, right? So like I don't know. Like, can she be healed normally? Like, does she need like does healing hurt undead? I might be thinking too video gamey, but
Yeah, I don't know, and we haven't had any data points that seem to give us more clarity on that.
yeah.
Because I was thinking about what else she has on her. She has a dead bird skull too,
Hmm.
right? And then
Yeah.
she mentioned she had
Hammer.
like a hammer. Was it like a not a jewel, but like a something
Like,
in her hair,
yeah,
or
it's a hammer. She said she could
is it an
maybe
actual
fix.
hammer?
Yeah, I think she said she
Oh,
could fix
okay.
F.C.G with it.
Okay, I thought it was like some kinda, like, decorative, like, hair thing that was looked like a hammer, but I think you're
It
right,
might
yeah,
have
it's an actual
been, but
hammer.
yeah,
Yours makes more sense with the context of her fixing FCG. Um, which FCG, I'm thinking something similar. I'm like, what's going on with his story? It feels like not all he gave up quite a bit of info. There's a large info dump in the first episode, but it kinda left me unsettled a little bit thinking like, "Okay, what else is going on there?" Especially his comment on like, let's just be open and honest. Let's just get it all out there. It's, for the best. I'm a little suspicious of FCG. Not really in a malicious way, but just like
yeah. I
your
think
kindness is suspicious.
I think there's more to him, but I don't think he's like lying, or I don't think he's like I think there's definitely a deeper story there, and maybe he didn't give us all the details on what happened when all his
Right.
brothers and sisters or whatever died. But like you're saying, I don't think it's malicious. I don't think it's sinister. I just think that, like I think his earnestness and his Ted Lasso-ness is genuine. Let me put it that way.
Sure. It's a
Um,
great way to put it.
but yeah, it there's been a few interesting things with him. And actually, before we depart completely from Laudna, there's one other thing I wanted to say before I dive into F.C.G. Um, the really interesting part to me was the fact that she said when she was talking about like how she was so alone and that's why she created Patè to like keep her company. She said him and the voice in my head.
Right.
So
Which
Laudna has some sort of voice in her head.
I took to mean her patron,
Me too. So
which possibly is what raised her
right.
back from the dead, if she is dead.
Oh, I just had a thought about. I don't think this would be it, but I'm thinking. Okay, so can I say this or? Um, there's an entity from
Like a
campaign
spoiler?
one.
Or oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. There's an entity from campaign one that was dark and shadowy. I'm just gonna say that.
Okay.
I wonder if he could be a patron and maybe brought her back. So for anyone that's seen campaign one, hopefully you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I will.
Just
I'll keep it. I'll keep it vague.
blink twice if you know who we're talking about.
um, but yeah. Anyway, so I did want to just call attention to that. So yeah, I'm guessing it's her patron too. But depending on who that is, it'd be interesting what their role in this was. Why bring her back? But
Hmm.
F.C.G. A few times this episode, it was called out like how unique he is. Like at the table, I think I was talking about this part in the recap. They're like, we've never seen anyone like you, and he's like, yeah, I'm unique, and he explicitly mentions that like he is even more capable than Dancer's other associates. His brothers
Mhm.
and sisters. So why? Why is he special? And then a part in the warehouse when they were investigating, he speaks for the first time, and all the workers in the warehouse are like, "What? It can speak?" So like, I guess most automatons can't speak.
Yeah,
So
or I think there was some comment in the first episode where like it was expected to i- i- fresh cut grass was sort of compared to like the robotic golems that open and shut the entryway onto the gondola. And so my impression is that maybe there's few like recorded phrases. And so hearing like a talking, you
Mm,
know, self independent automatron was totally mind blowing for sure.
yeah. So I mean, clearly he's special, and I think that just ties into kind of what we were saying that like there's obviously more going on there, and
Sure.
I don't know. I just wonder what it is. Like maybe I don't know. A dancer maybe made these for some purpose that I don't know. I don't know. I'm completely shooting in the dark, but I feel like there's some like grander scheme to him and his brothers and sisters, I think, and maybe that's even why they were killed, and maybe it wasn't because of this mine
Yeah. That
clearing.
whole story is very suspect of like
Yeah.
basically I was sleeping and then I woke up, everyone was dead. Like that's there's definitely more there for sure.
Yeah.
So which, you know, Ashton seems pretty keen on protecting him almost, which
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed. It has definitely the sort of this Robin Hood-esque um
Yeah.
is this type of character. Mentions I'm really interested to hear more about his 4 different kinds of rages.
Yeah, me
And we
too.
also had the gravity, whatever effect he had, and then I think what was the chaos burst.
Mhm.
We've heard a lot of terminology for his characters, so it'd be really interesting to get at what point do we get it all cut and dry, put out there so we know exactly what is how he's designed this homebrew character.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what him and Matt come up with. And I mean, I have to assume that I don't know if it'll be a year from now or a week from now that it eventually will get like added to like the DM guild or like whatever, like so other people could play this subclass if they want. Same with F.C.G since he is a custom built too. But yeah, I've never played a barbarian. I've DM'd, but I've only ever played once, and that was a bard. So I don't know. I think there are like two types of rage typically. I think there's like a rage and a frenzied rage. Um, but so four types. I'm assuming those were just completely custom built. But maybe there are like naturally four types of rage in D&D. I'm actually not sure.
I don't know. My players in my campaign are level 2, so they just they just have rage.
Yeah, well, at
Good
least
old fashioned rage.
from uh from my experience with the first two campaigns, there were a couple barbarians. I don't think I ever heard anything besides Frenzied Rage and Rage. So, yeah, I can't wait to see what that is. And when even in that first combat, when he used the one rage he did, he said it was his fun rage. So I wonder what that means. Maybe
Yeah,
he has like
right.
different like tied to different emotions that he can use. Like this one though, they're just kind of having fun beating up this old man. It's
Mhm,
my fun one. Maybe if like he actually is legitimately angry is like a true rage or something. I don't know.
mhm. Yeah, and jumping to another character, Orym, hearing him, we know from Xander Unlimited, we were suspicious that he had maybe even been, maybe even like a guard of Keyleth's or some kind of connection with
Yeah.
Keyleth. So it was nice to get that mentioned again. He had mentioned he was from Zephyra and Xander Unlimited as well, and we. Again, we're gonna put out a video that like pulls some of these details for people who didn't watch EXU, but there was the moment in Byrodin where he's training in front of the statue and is thinking about um, is if he's going to press on.
Mm-hmm.
And he says effectively, for them, I will, referring to the party. And then he says, for him, I will.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm starting to also piece this together with sort of his familiarity with Vox Machina and wondering, is he referring to someone on Vox Machina? Is he referring to a character from a previous campaign? Excited to see where his character goes because we're getting these little breadcrumbs that makes his character pretty interesting.
Yeah, I can't remember if this was explicitly stated and that's why I feel this way, or maybe it's just I don't know. But for me, I think there were a couple references in EXU to Orym saying a him without any
Mhm.
more, detail. Um, but I think it might be his partner or his husband.
Yeah, like a lover or
Hmm.
something. And even made us we even talked about, like, is this someone who's died or, like, someone who, there's a rift and he had to leave? Like, we weren't really clear on it.
Yeah,
So
for my money, I feel like it was is they've passed um passed away. because he's looking for a fresh start, and there's a few other kind of like subtle clues that I think that maybe that person is gone, and now this is why he is kind of
Mm.
out looking for a new purpose, a new, because it is.
I go ahead.
I was just gonna say it is interesting that like why did he leave Zephyra?
Hmm.
I mean, I guess they are currently on a mission for the Voice of the Tempest. I think that's what was mentioned at the very beginning of episode 1, campaign 3.
Right.
But so maybe he still does like live in Zephyr. He's just on missions. But the fact that he said he wanted a new start, and that seemed to be genuine. Like, why does he want to leave? What's happening with him?
Right. Right.
What were you
Trying to
gonna
think of any
say?
other. Oh, I was just gonna the whole fresh start thing. I was going to say they've still been pretty tight-lipped about their mission, which again, without getting too much into EXU, part of what they had gotten involved with were implications of something very large coming, something that could be happening that might be dangerous to Exandria as a whole.
Hmm.
And it seems like Keyleth has sent them on this mission to find someone that's related to this. And it's interesting that they're still keeping it pretty
Close to the
close to the
chest.
chest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what's going on there, and that might even. I mean, not to segue us here, but to see what happens with Robbie. I think I forgot what it was that got put out, but something got put out this week that I think made people lean toward, oh, he's a guest and not a permanent. I can't remember to reference what that was, but something did come out. So for my money, I think that he probably is a guest. Which is, I mean, is fine. I would love Robbie to stay, but
Yeah, he's
um,
done great.
I just wonder how that's gonna, with presumably Fern and Orym staying, and those actually, those are Liam and Ashley's characters for this campaign. I wonder what's going to be the crossroads there that makes Dorian leave and makes the EXU crew decide to permanently like continue with this band of adventurers when they have a mission already. So maybe their mission becomes everyone's mission. I mean, I just can't see them abandoning what they're working on from EXU. So I'm just wondering
Yeah, and
how do we reconcile all those things?
yeah, the weightiness, the stakes from EXU seem so defining to the world of Exandria in general. It
Hmm.
would be hard for me to imagine that they would just shelf it
Yeah.
and would just table it. So who knows?
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe something else we could talk about would be speaking of characters and like who's what each person's character is.
Hmm.
We've talked a little bit about Travis Willingham potentially maybe playing long term a different character than
Yeah.
Bertrand Bell, which I love how Bertrand Bell like looks for every opportunity to basically BS about how important he is, all the
Yeah.
things, the people he knows. It is interesting though. He does seem to have a. I think he mentions last episode that he's been in town for a few months, or maybe I'm misremembering entirely. Um, but he seems to know quite a bit of what's happening.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's worked for Eshteross for a while. Something I forgot to mention in the recap, Fern is asking about the Ivory Syndicate and says basically like, do you see them anywhere or something like that? Or maybe they're talking about it actually when they're about to set up for the stakeout and like, what should we be looking for?
Yeah.
And Bertrand mentions that, I think it's Bertrand who mentions it, that, or maybe it was Ashton. I can't remember now that I think about it, that the Ivory Syndicate has no logo, no iconography associated with them, no like team colors.
Yeah.
They literally part of their MO is blending in as much as possible, and so you never know who they may be. But there was the comment made that the Chandri Quorum, which is sort of like the established,
Like authority.
yeah, right. um, that they certain members have been working directly with the Ivory Syndicate and potentially maybe even protecting the Ivory Syndicate.
Yeah,
Um,
I want to. Yeah, okay. Thanks for bringing this up because I wanted to dive into this as well. Because I think they were saying that like either they're in on it or they're like incompetent because the Ivory Syndicate has not had any backlash. Like there's been no action taken to like strike against them or anything. So they were wondering if the quorum and them were in cahoots. Um, And yeah, Bertrand seems to be legitimately frightened of the Ivory Syndicate. That's kind of one of the things that's kind of pierced through his like veneer of bravado. Um, was and he goes and gets that cloak so that he people can't see that he's like wearing fancy clothes and uh I really want to know more about what happened with him because we found out that he abandoned the last team he was with on the last mission he was doing with or for Eshteross. And I don't know if it was explicitly said that the Ivory Syndicate was what like went wrong in that mission, but that's the implication I got is that
Mhm.
like they ran into them and things got bad and so Bertrand ran. Um
And he also mentions they say have the kind of tryout we just had, have you been part of that before? And he says, "Oh yeah, many times." Which
yeah.
I don't know if that's an accurate statement or not, but it also makes me wonder what happened to all of those people.
Yeah. And so like what what was his previous mission? I mean, it's seemingly Lord Eshteross is at like one of the forces trying to battle against the Ivory Syndicate. I mean, maybe there's some sort of like double cross or like maybe he's part of the Ivory Syndicate for all we know, but it seems like that um if indeed the mission Bertram was on that he abandoned was against them, that Eshteross would be against them.
Mhm.
So I don't know. It just seemed like he was legitimately scared of that, and I don't know. It makes me want to know more about the this mystery here. Like what was the mission he was on previously, and
Yeah.
what does the Ivory Syndicate want? Do we think they're even connected to this current mystery that the party is investigating about these stolen goods, the stolen broomstone, apparently?
Right. Yeah,
Which
yeah.
yeah,
So it's implied that it's not like random stuff being stolen, but that
right.
maybe someone is shipping Broomstone, you know, in disguise of these products, basically, and someone else is then breaking in and lifting it. Which the two things I wondered was, is Eshteross shipping it and someone else
Ooh,
is robbing from him, or is someone else basically using his warehouse to move product in so that someone else can
that's a good
pick it
point.
up?
I was just wondering that. I wonder. I guess he really kind of kept all the details close to the vest because I was thinking, like, would he have told them if that's what was
Yeah.
happening? But he maybe
Well,
wouldn't have.
Orym did have the natural 20, and I did wanna
Yeah,
come back to the Whisper. Um, have we
that's
ever
true.
found out after the fact what was whispered originally? Like, will we ever
Um,
know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, not every time, because sometimes it's not even necessarily important or relevant.
Yeah, okay.
Um, so it might, yeah, like it if what he had gleaned was some sort of like something to that effect that like Eshteross was being shady in that way, I feel like Orm would have brought it up to everybody afterward. So it's interesting that Liam didn't ever really like kind of say anything about that moment to the party, like in character. Um, but so we may or we may not find out like what the context of that was. I
Yeah,
think
okay.
if it's like relevant in that way, that it probably will come up. Um, but it just depends.
Mhm.
But that's
Now
really interesting that maybe he's got this side hustle going on and somebody's stealing from him and he wants to know who it is. And it not textiles, I mean, because of the illicit broomstone. I think that makes more sense, honestly. You
yeah,
know?
then someone, like, using his basically
Right.
warehouse without him knowing.
Like he's gotten to that position he's at because he probably does stuff like that?
Now has Broomstone come up in the previous campaigns?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
It's basically, I mean, Matt, I think pretty much covered it. It's like this magic resource that like helps things fly, to put it simply.
Yeah, okay.
Hence the name. Although I don't think it's spelled the same way as like a BRROM. It's spelled differently. I don't remember how it's spelled, but
Yeah, okay.
fun fact.
Interesting. Huh.
Um,
Okay.
but
So
yeah,
then do you think is Danis apprehensive because she doesn't want these effectively bystanders knowing about the broomstone? Like perhaps, she knows that Eshteross wouldn't want anyone to know? Or do you think this is like classic, lead employee is double crossing her boss?
Yeah, I was trying to get a pulse on which way I was going with that because at first I just felt that she was acting normal, like trying to be helpful, and then it's like, who are these people? Like, what's going on here? And not necessarily like, oh, I'm gonna get caught. More of just a like, I might lose my job because I'm letting random people come look. But then at the very end, she was seeming kind of fishy. But I originally didn't think she was in on it, but now I'm not sure. Because I think she was totally like, it's totally um rational for her to be like feeling the way she did, even if she wasn't,
Right.
stealing stuff.
Right.
But doesn't she like go back explicitly to like look at the same ones they looked at the end or something?
I think she does check around to see like what they had gotten into.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I'm not really answering your question, but what about you? Which way are you kind of
It
leaning on
seems
that?
like I mean, I was kind of thinking it would be like your stereotypical like employee stealing from the boss, but then like her relative like calm nature of like these total randos like looking through the stuff being like, "Okay, yeah, sure." I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." But then at the end, I went back to it. I was like, "Okay, this is I mean, obviously it was suspicious enough for the party for Bertrand and Imogen to leave. As Liam O'Brien was like, "Don't split the party." Okay, never
Yeah.
mind. Just so clearly important enough for them to follow her. So,
Yeah. True. I uh I could easily see that being a red herring, but I mean, it also might.
mhm.
I mean, it's the cleanest answer, right? Because it seemed like all the other employees were kind of just, you know, dense and kind of thinking about other things. So if it wasn't her, it seems like it's somebody we haven't met yet, and not
Yeah,
necessarily
okay.
one of them. Um, but that whole warehouse sequence was really interesting. Mainly because of everything we learned about Imogen in that moment, like these special abilities that she has.
And it seems
Um,
like her mind reading is based on how many people are within like 30 feet of her or what have you.
yeah,
And seems like it's hard to she even gets he like it wasn't like a point of exhaustion, but he penalizes her for
right,
casting
right.
whatever it is around so many people.
Right. He was saying that like you're gonna have disadvantage on this. I don't remember what the details were, right? But it's because she's a too novice at what's going on here to really like be able to tune out and focus on what she's looking for. But yeah, so I don't know if that's a homebrew thing that he's made for her, or if that actually is a feat. So if somebody watching this knows, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. But
It seems homebrew. I
it
mean, I
felt
think
homebrew to me.
yeah, I know Kalashtar from Eberron, I mean Novrin had Mind Link,
That's right,
which,
yeah. That's what I thought
and
it
so
was when I didn't think she was a Kalashtar, but maybe she is,
yeah.
but,
Well, I mean, that would be a a crossover. I mean, I mean, it's Matt's world, so I have no
his
idea.
version of that or, something.
Yeah, it could be totally, his version of that, I don't know. But, but yeah.
But, anyway, back to I'm fascinated by that, which kind of brings us back to something we talked about in the first episode, which was why is she looking for this access to the conservatory? What is she trying to research? And maybe we speculated that maybe it was, like, what's happening to her, and, this just not that that's 100% the case, but this was like another notch in that theory for me because she's clearly inexperienced with her abilities, which to me means they're newer, and I
Right.
feel like she might want to research like what's happening. But super cool just as a mechanic and as an RP thing to play with that you can just hear everyone around you's thoughts, and I really like the amount of thought and detail that went into like the mechanics of that being that that can be a bad thing sometimes and you get a penalty because there's just too much information coming your
Yeah,
way.
without it being, like, broken or,
Yeah.
I can think about being, like, in a home D&D session, like, I detect I know what they're thinking, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, okay.
Ugh.
Yeah.
But
He's lying and he's the big bad. You're like, "What?"
stop. Why did I agree to this? What if do you think that facet of her ability is the same thing she's using to telekinetically speak to people?
No, it seems like she also has I mean, yes. Yes, I do, but it seems like it's linked in some way to, because Matt keeps specifically asking her, "Are you doing the feat or are you doing the spell slot?"
Mm.
So it seems like there is sort of this natural feat that she has, but then also has some either maybe it's referring to detect thoughts, the spell. I'm not quite sure, but has also a spell version, which it's interesting that you would double up. That's what's interesting to me is why would you double up if you already have it as a feat? Why would you also pick it for your prepared spells?
Maybe the feat like includes the spell. It's like you can do this base version at all times, but also as part of the
Yeah,
feat, you can use a spell slot to, enhance it or something.
that's a great insight for sure. Yeah,
Uh,
okay.
But I'm just curious as to how her communication aspects works because it's like kind of like message, but it's not message. We found that out. Nor is
Right.
it sending. There may even be. I was actually going to ask you this: the Kalashtar trait that your character had. What was that? The same thing? As long as you could see somebody, you could.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
but she talks about like a 3 minute window. Do you remember enough to know if that was the same?
No, I think it was you could communicate to anyone you could see within a, large radius, large range, and they could choose to respond to you. And I
Okay.
think that's basically what it was. I can't remember honestly.
Because it was interesting that she was able to like simultaneously like have multiple conversations with this at
Mhm.
once, but there is the limit of have to see, and I don't remember where 3 minutes came into play, but I remember her talking about I can only
Yeah,
do
I
it
don't
for
know.
3 minutes or something.
Yeah, yeah, I do remember that, but I don't remember the
Which
context of it.
that aspect makes it seem like it's not a 24/7 at will thing. It must be like a not necessarily a cast, but like an
Mhm.
action, I guess, to use it or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to get too in the weeds on this, but I was just
It's like 1
really.
hour later, like a
But
whiteboard
so if
up. So we
she
know.
messages the robot,
Yeah, yeah.
but I was just curious how it worked.
It is
Um,
interesting to me that, fresh cut grass being a robot has a sense of consciousness, like an internal voice to communicate with,
mhm.
and Fern even, like, counters his comment of, like, I don't have a spirit or a soul or whatever, and basically says, "Well, maybe you do, like,
Yeah,
we're all made." And that's back in the first episode, but it was just an interesting detail that he has an inner voice that he actually hears Imogen speak to him and then speaks back.
true.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think that's just part of his deeper mystery, what he is. Maybe he is even like he thinks he doesn't have a soul, but maybe he does. Maybe his soul is from a human that was put into a robot to continue or
Oh,
something.
yeah, okay.
Um, and speaking of all these messages spells, it's interesting that he too has one, but it is different, which makes it seems like it's a homebrew version of message because he uses it to try to speak to Orym in the final moments of the episode. But it's revealed that he can't like send a message. He tells Orym that you just feel like a sense.
The emotion or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to wonder like that's cool, and I'm wondering what the applications of that is. Like, if you actually can't send a message, maybe just once you get to know fresh cut grass well enough, you can. There's some sort of language there that you can say a lot without just through feeling or something.
Yeah, I
Um,
took it as like, he can like send vibes to people, maybe even like a bardic inspiration type thing. But I don't know.
yeah, yeah, that is interesting. I mean, I guess at the very least, you could be like send the message of fear, and they would know, like, okay, go in, we gotta help them, or
Yeah.
there's
I'm
definitely
like
applications there.
I'm like, release the character sheets. Like we
Yes,
release
please,
them.
we want to
We want to
study
know.
them.
Yes. So uh any other details that you want to talk about?
Uh, let's see. Sorry, I'm looking through my notes here.
Yeah, I'd look through mine too.
Um, you already mentioned it, but I feel like it's worth repeating just because I really enjoyed the moment as well with the like homeless drunk guy that passed out next to them, and Fern takes his money. I really loved that moment with Ashton's character.
Mhm.
Just saying we don't take copper.
Yeah,
This
Ashton's great.
this classic for those of you that are new, this classic critical role that like there's a hour plus of them just sitting outside trying to figure out what to do this episode with the planning. That's you're in for more of that. Which
Okay.
I thought that whole sequence was funny with like I could turn it to a crab and I could do this and
Yeah, yeah. It's like they're reading off their character sheet. I could do this, and
yep.
then they're like, "Well, if you turn into a crab, what would happen?" Like, I don't know. Maybe they'd want to eat me, or I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of options that got thrown out there for sure. And then what they landed on was clearly not very good anyway.
Yeah,
As
that's
Orym
also a very critical role.
as Orym is now stranded in the locked warehouse with no lights and feeling this energy from fresh cut grass that's kind of freaking him out.
Yes,
So
perfect.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
I just had one thing, but I lost it. So go ahead with whatever you were gonna say.
I had one other detail, one question.
Yeah.
Um, Age of Arcana, floating cities. Was
Yes.
that from the lore video, or has that been during our campaign time, like campaign 1 through 3? Because wasn't there a detail about floating cities that had crashed at some point, or
Yes.
what was
I
that?
That is 100% a thing. I don't remember if it's from the like. I, I
I'm
know
like, I
more
can't
about that,
place
but I don't
where
remember
that
if it's
came
from the
from.
lore video or if it's from older campaigns.
Yeah,
But if
okay.
you know about it, then it must be from the
Well,
lore
yeah, because
video,
I have
right?
just the thought in my head of like watching something and being like, yeah, the floating cities when they finally, and I was like, oh, what? There were
Yeah, no,
floating
I think it
cities.
is from
So
the lore video. So yeah, I was
okay,
hesitant to bring that up or not, but I think it must be from there. But so yeah, the broomstone could also potentially float cities, just like it could float
yeah.
airships.
And then with that is probably is like a well, I can't say this without heavy spoilers, but I think the answer is I just need to go watch campaign 1. But as they're talking about Vox Machina, um, Bertrand says, "Oh yeah, Vox Machina, the defeaters of the Whispered One," which
Hmm.
I'm assuming was a big bad, not maybe not the big bad, but a big bad in campaign 1.
Probably.
You'll never know.
But yeah, I mean, you and anyone watching this that is enjoying this should absolutely watch campaign 1. It's
It's definitely got me thinking about it for
which
sure. I'm
I
like,
mentioned, I
oh,
think in our first episode that it's going to be a shock to go from the production value that we have back to that, but it's like you can get over it and it's good. It's worth it and the heart's there and that's what matters. They don't have the fancy set, but
yeah, okay,
the heart of it's there.
all right, cool.
Um
Well,
yeah, I feel like there's a million things to talk about this episode and my notes are jumbled and jambled. So I
sure.
know I'm missing probably awesome moments that I wanted to talk about, but I think we hit most of it.
I think definitely you guys who are watching, if you had an awesome moment you loved, or you want to talk about one that we've already mentioned, just mention it in the comments below, and we'll dive in and chat about it.
Yeah.
Great episode. I'm just every week it's over. I'm just like, oh my gosh, is it Thursday?
I know,
Thursday yet?
just like
Right?
the rest of the
So
cast. They're like, "No, I want to keep
yeah, and that was
playing."
like it's getting late, which then made me wonder, like, well, are you actually recording late at night, or is that just
Yeah, that's a good
'cause it's
point.
pre-recorded? I don't know. But anyway, also don't forget you can tweet at us at the Pixelists. Man, that just rolls so much better than the previous one. And also, by the way, heads up, we are transitioning. We're going to keep the show on YouTube. We're going to be transitioning the show also onto audio podcast formats,
Hey.
which you'll be able to find that podcast literally anywhere you listen to podcasts. And we'll be sure to let you know when that's official and out. But yeah, Will, any other comments you want to make?
I just want to say to anyone listening to this, thanks. Like, Blake and I were blown away by the response to the most recent Critical
Yeah.
Role videos we've been putting out. I mean, we've been doing this for like a couple months, but we're pretty new to this, and the reaction to this last one blew us away. We're super excited to have all you other critters coming along on this journey with us, and I just appreciate it. So
Yeah.
thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah. Well, Will, we got to do our thumbnail.
Oh yeah. I don't know what to do.
You got to put your head
Yeah,
up.
yeah, for
You
sure.
know? I feel like maybe we just give a nice little. Well, mine would be more formal. I don't know what yours would be.
I'll just be a penguin, I guess. I mean, I think that's
Okay.
enough
Yeah.
for the thumbnail. I'm gonna take my headset off, so I won't be able to hear you, but
Sure.
it'll look better.
Sure. I'm gonna be more dapper, and I'll do. I'll imitate Fern, Ashley Johnson doing her. They're like, "Why are you grabbing your boobs?" Did we just do it? Are we good? We got it.
I'm sure
I
we got
realized you
something in
couldn't hear
there.
me talking to you right there. I was like chatting, and I was like, "He's not responding."
Yeah, I was like, I saw
But
your lips moving. I was like,
yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all we got.
alrighty, y'all. Until next
See
time.
ya. Until next Friday. See ya.